Welcome to our latest Chamber podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the upcoming 2020 Birmingham Economic Review, which launches on the 20th of October and is a joint publication produced by the Chamber and the University of Birmingham City-REDI team. There's certainly lots to discuss at the moment and an awful lot packed into the review. And we're going to be touching on the impact of COVID-19 on the city and the wider region, the economic recovery, which we're all looking out for now, as well as opportunities for Birmingham to become more environmentally sustainable and also to better support ethnic minority-led businesses. So I'm Paul Faulkner, Chief Executive at the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and I'm delighted today that we're joined by my colleague Henrietta Brealey, who's the Director of Policy and Strategic Relationships at the Chamber, and also Professor Simon Collinson, who's the Deputy Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Regional Engagement at the University of Birmingham, as well as being the Director of the University's WM-REDI Institute and City-REDI. So, Simon, if I can come to you to start with, tell us a little bit about the economic review, how it came about and its purpose.
Of course, Paul. Hello, everyone. This is a fantastic sort of output of several years of partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're really pleased with the latest iteration. What the Birmingham Economic Review has done every year is to take a snapshot, a stock take of how the region is faring, how it's progressing economically, but also we include sort of social benchmarks as well. And we look at data trends over time. So are we improving? How much we're progressing? And also we do a comparative analysis within this, comparing the city region with other core cities and to the UK and international averages. And we cover the economy, firms, sectors, investment, but we're also including a lot more inclusivity and sustainability goals to see how the region sets up as a sort of inclusive and a more equal place to do business.
And Henrietta, from the Chamber's perspective, this has really become a flagship publication, hasn't it? And we know that throughout the year, it's always our most downloaded document on our website. What's your view on the economic review and how it's evolved over the past couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it's really one of our flagship reports, and we're so delighted to be working with City-REDI again on it this year. Because really, what it does is a bit of an annual report on the region, our sort of school report. How are we scoring against those core areas in amongst everything that's happening at the moment? It's a really useful exercise in just taking stock, summarising, looking where we're at. What's great about working with City-REDI on it is we're able to bring together that real detailed insight, the data, the analysis, together with the business community story throughout the economic review. We've got lots of talking head pieces from key leaders in the business and civic community, just sort of bringing to life some of the stats and the detail and the analysis and putting a bit of a story around it for where the region's at, where it's been, and then importantly, where we're going next.
And Simon, you mentioned that the reviews looked at how we are improving as a region, and certainly that's been the theme in recent years. What's the 2020 review found? And I suppose in particular, how's the city's economy been impacted by COVID-19?
Well, the city region was on an absolute growth spurt, and we had huge momentum. We were sort of topping the charts in the UK as a region for inward investment, retaining skills, growth in infrastructure projects. It was superb to see. And, unfortunately, the pandemic has hit us harder than most other regions. We were hit hard by the 2008 recession, and we've been hit hard by this one. Now, in the last one, we bounced back quickly, so we had a great V-shaped recovery. We're hoping to see that, but at the moment, signs it's a bit early to tell. The predictions we've got is that it's going to probably, at the end of the day, for 2020, cause the region's economy to contract by about 9.1 or 2%, compared with a UK average of about 7.2, 0.3%. But productivity and employment are probably going to fall more than the UK average. And part of that is because of the structure of our economy, with quite a lot of advanced manufacturing firms in the region. But again, what the hope is that we bounce back quicker, we respond and we're agile, and actually the growth spurt continues after this period. But this period is difficult to tell, in terms of how long this is going to go on for. The timescales for COVID, but also Brexit in combination with that are hitting firms with a lot of uncertainty at the moment.
No, absolutely. And I know, Henrietta, your team and the Chamber in general are doing an awful lot of work around Brexit. Has that factored into a lot of what we're sort of seeing come through in the economic review this year?
Yeah, there's certainly some elements of Brexit explored in the economic review, but obviously where we are right now, really it's COVID response and COVID recovery that's still dominating businesses' agendas and businesses' minds, although we do very seriously need to start looking at Brexit, given where we are so close to the end of the transition period and the likelihood that if there is any deal at all, it will only be a very thin deal. So there's a lot of changes to come businesses' way. Which, I heard it described earlier as a storm coming when the house is on fire, which was a very vivid, if slightly depressing metaphor there. So we are seeing a lot of challenges around this. And within the economic review, we do look at some of those, and in particular, the exposure of the region to Brexit-related disruptions. Some of Simon's colleagues have done some really interesting research on how different regions across the EU could be impacted by Brexit. And unfortunately, ours, for exactly the same reasons we've been impacted so far, are quite exposed, that sort of advanced manufacturing in particular, the automotive sector. However, that being said, I don't, it's not all gloom and doom. There's been a lot of really interesting innovation, businesses taking new approaches to adapting to the current climate really quickly during the past few months. And we've got some really interesting case studies from businesses that have been able to do just that, just adapt unbelievably quickly. And obviously with our region, Birmingham, city of 1,000 trades, innovation, adaptation is really part of its roots. Whenever we talk about Brexit, I always use the example of the Chamber was actually founded in 1813 for a large part because the traders of Birmingham had had their access to European markets disrupted by the Napoleonic Wars and actually wanted to do something collectively to do something about it. So it's slightly fitting that we're here today talking about supporting businesses in accessing European markets, albeit in a very different context, but also a sign of how difficult times they come, they go, and this region does manage to survive and thrive through. And a large part of that is down to that innovative spirit.
Yeah, and the Chamber, the University of Birmingham, two great anchor institutions in this region, and as you pointed out, have been through challenging times before, and you can always dive deep into history and find examples, and better times will return. And I suppose it's great that the review's able to reflect the here and now, the extreme challenges, but also, as you sort of highlighted there, sort of pull out some of the bits of innovation, some of those great sort of inspiring tales that are still taking place. Now, we're recording this today when the Chancellor's not long rolled out his package of additional support for businesses, including the job support scheme, which is designed to sort of step in once the coronavirus job retention scheme, the furlough scheme, comes to an end at the end of October. Interested to get both of your views really on I suppose, what the end of the furlough scheme, what impact that will have here in Birmingham and the West Midlands, potentially, early views on what the job support scheme, what sort of impact that will have, and really just touch a little bit on the sort of skills gaps that predate COVID-19. Do they pose additional challenges in these circumstances for our region? Simon, should we start with you, if that's okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just to the job support scheme, that's going to help pay wages of workers who can work at least a third of their normal hours, and it's going to run for 6 months. As you say, starting in November when furlough runs out at the end of October. This is frankly less generous, but the country can't afford to maintain all jobs in all sectors, and we know that, so it is less generous. It is also likely we're going to see quite an increase in unemployment, and let's be clear, this is going to hit very specific sectors and very specific firms. It's not a general issue. It's actually very particular firms who will be hit both by Brexit and the COVID, including advanced manufacturing, but also hospitality, accommodation, people-based services. So we'd argue for more precise interventions, just to hold us over this point. The job support scheme is going to help, but you need to focus these in terms of the places you're intervening or investing or supporting, but also the specific sectors and firms to avoid these sort of knock-on effects. And the knock-on effects are multipliers that run through small firms and less able firms because they get hit if large firms get hit. But there's also knock-on effects on households that are vulnerable. So taking a longer-term view about this, assuming we get through this, skills Maintaining employment and skills are both the short and the long-term solution around a lot of this. If we can improve our skill base, which is sub the average, it's below the average for the UK, and it needs to be improved. Improving skills it helps you become more competitive and productive as a region. It helps firms grow and become innovative, but at the same time, upskilling individuals who are in the low skill bracket enables them to improve their incomes, and that flows through to households. So it's the key to competitiveness, and it's the key to inclusivity. So skills are right at the heart of the short and long-term development of our regional economy.
Mm-hmm. I'd absolutely echo that. I think the measures that have been brought forward so far, it's very short term. It's that bigger piece. In the short term as well, that sector-specific support, being able to have 33% of your wages pay, being able to keep working for 33% of your time is only good for industries where there is still at least 33% of the work. We talk a lot about the major events industry, for instance, where they are still banned from putting on major events. They are unable to fulfill their core function, unable to do business, and have been for the last 6 months. And there is a huge tail of firms that supply into that sector, everything from sort of specialist lighting and rigging, right the way down to expo specialists, exhibition stands, people who do personalised marketing, which is primarily used at events, and sort of corporate branded goods. There is a huge supply chain that's being significantly impacted by the inability to put on major events such as expos, conferences, sporting events, and even in terms of cultural performances, being able to do those on a socially distanced basis severely restricts what can and can't be done. So that has a real big impact there, and we're still waiting for what sector-specific support, if anything, will be brought in for those businesses that were perfectly viable pre this, but due to government guidance are unable to continue. In terms of skills, as Simon's alluded to, we do know, and we have reported frequently in previous economic reviews, that although the region has improved in recent years, Birmingham does lag behind the national average when it comes to high-level qualifications. And we know that one of the big growth areas to come out of COVID-19, because it's not all gloom and doom, there are some sectors that have done quite well. And one of those in particular is obviously IT. Technology, as everyone's moving to a new digital world. Businesses that are related to digital IT, those sorts of technologies have been doing pretty well and growing. And that's an area where there is a shortage of skilled staff. So it's an area that as a region, if we want to become leaders in, there does need to be more investment in skills in those areas and more encouragement of younger people to enter it. And also potentially, I'd like to see more from the Chancellor around investment in reskilling those who have had to leave their current industries and are looking to find new opportunities. So that's an opportunity there. There's also, off the back of COVID-19, obviously growing demand for skills in healthcare. And there's some interesting opportunities for the region around the broader technology, health technology and life sciences space, and becoming a leader in that field. And I think this current crisis, if anything, emphasised how important innovation and development in that space is. And we hope to see that there'll be further opportunities taken up by the region in future.
Yeah, and we've absolutely got to grab these opportunities, haven't we, to try to not just to fuel the recovery, but to try to sort of fix some of those longer term skills challenges and gaps that we've had. And I suppose that's one area where, a publication such as the Economic Review, which has that deep dive and again now has some history to it, so we can compare going back, can really help to sort of add to the lobbying efforts in the sort of both the immediate term of what we need right now, but also sort of saying that we can look slightly more medium term into the future, and the data that's in here and the analysis that's in here backs up that, doesn't it? And it's great to be able to present that to stakeholders either at a regional level or a national level and help to very much make our case. Just slightly sort of shifting away from COVID, because I know there is an awful lot more in the review as well. There's been a lot of discussion lately about environmental sustainability in Birmingham and the wider region. Do you think there's going to be a long-term change in regards to air quality and sustainability as a result of the pandemic? Open question to either of you there.
Yeah, well, there's certainly been one of the really interesting bits of data coming out of the pandemic has been in the improvements in air quality and obviously the reduction in traffic that took place during those really peak lockdown months. But obviously, as we move back towards hopefully trying to unlock more of the economy, the question is, how do we do that? How do we keep that going? How do we keep encouraging people to use active transport, use public transport, particularly in current concerns about the pandemic? And generally encourage more sustainable travel. And obviously this is a huge area for Birmingham, which is still due to implement its clean air zone in the coming months, expected early next year, and is looking to make other big moves around transforming the city centre to encourage more of that active travel, public transport. So it does remain a really topical area. It really was, if we can all remember back to the start of the year, global warming, the climate crisis, that was one of the top issues coming into 2020. And it's really been sort of knocked off that by coronavirus pandemic, now Brexit, but it's not going anywhere. That is going to remain a really critical issue. And we're looking forward to doing more work with businesses on what exactly becoming more environmentally sustainable looks like for individual businesses, particularly SMEs. And within the economic review, we do look at some of that data for how travel changed during the pandemic and what's coming up next when it comes to that sort of whole clean air and sustainability agenda.
Yeah, no, thinking back 9 months, it was a topic right at the top of our agenda, wasn't it? And if only we'd known then what we know now. It's, Simon, what's your sort of take around environmental sort of sustainability and just what a critical topic that this is for, I suppose, it's the whole world, isn't it? You break that down into the country, but no, in particular, obviously, our city region.
No, absolutely. This is critical. I mean, this is global. And in fact, we cannot afford not to pay attention to this, regardless of the short-term uncertainties we're in. So I agree entirely with Henrietta. And, we have this is about growing better, not just growing faster. This is economic growth, but keeping in mind both inclusivity and sustainability. And I think rather than sort of grand words, we've got to really drill down to how this works in practice. And we've got an opportunity here to reshape the agenda to grow more sustainably. And in particular, WM Air is a project that connects clean air to health. So it's not just about sustainability standing alone. It's actually about how health will be improved in our region. And that's one of our current sort of weaknesses by becoming more sustainable in terms of air quality. There's also the technology park at Tyseley, which is about energy innovation. So you can become more sustainable, but at the same time develop a cluster of research, development, innovation, skills around sustainability, that we can export to other places, and we can be the centre for innovation in that area. So it's not a disconnected agenda. It's got to connect to all the other things, and it's absolutely an overarching principle for long-term growth.
Yeah, no, very much linked. And you talk there about growing better, which I think is a great way to look at this, and the importance of inclusivity. And another pivotal event in this year, in amongst many, has been the sort of Black Lives Matter movement, which came about after the death of George Floyd in the summer, and then has really sort of continued and gathered pace. I mean, tell us a little bit, Henrietta, around how the Chamber is engaging with that and helping Black-owned businesses and I guess the wider support that we have for ethnic minority-led businesses to sort of really grow and flourish and to play an even bigger role in our regional economy.
Oh, absolutely. This has been one of the really pivotal movements of the year. A very busy year, as you alluded to, but this is certainly an area where we know we all need to do more. And the Black Lives Matter protests really brought the world's attention how much action is needed. No more sort of nice words when it comes to inclusivity and diversity, the need for genuine action and change. And obviously Birmingham being a hugely diverse city, we did see a significant number of protests and a lot of action in the city. And in fact, in the economic review, we do look at the diversity of the city's population and the workforce. When it comes to the Chamber's response, we've been looking at it ourselves as an organisation, looking at how we can reflect the diversity of the city, ensure we're actively doing this across all of our different boards, groups, activities, and not just, as I say, looking at it, going, how do we reach out to people that we're not engaging with? How do we start building those relationships and do things differently? We're actively supporting, along with a number of regional partners, Black Pound Day, which is a campaign to showcase and encourage doing businesses with Black-owned business and really sort of supporting that part of the economy. And we're also supporting a number of initiatives like through our Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce. We're part of the Commonwealth Inclusive Legacy Programme, which is delivered by the Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP. And we're supporting a cohort of businesses, ethnic minority-owned businesses, through understanding and accessing not just procurement opportunities related to Commonwealth Games, but also opportunities to do business in other markets and generally get that sort of full opportunity to make the most of the Commonwealth Games. We're also working with our members on various different private roundtables, open webinars and seminars on talking openly about inclusivity, diversity, and what's actually going to change as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests within businesses across the region, and really trying to just make it an open conversation and not something that people feel awkward talking about, something that we can all be really open about and admit, yeah, we've got more to do, and what exactly are we going to be doing about it? So that's some of the activities we've been doing there. Yeah.
And Simon, sort of from the university's perspective, what's been going on around this agenda from your side?
Well, this is massively important to us. And let's face it, for everybody, this is a work in progress. We have a massively diverse population in the West Midlands and the City region, and that's a massive advantage to us. It's young and diverse. And universities have risen to this challenge really well. In fact, I think our universities are probably exemplars for others across the country in terms of very specifically widening participation and improving access to education for the region's population. And then also encouraging, our graduates to stay in the region. So you get an upskilling effect and you get a retention of skills in the region that improves, again, the diversity of high-skilled individuals working in our businesses. University of Birmingham has its school. We're the only university in the country to have a school. And it's one amongst a number of channels by which we encourage a much wider, diverse population, both in terms of cultures and ethnic minorities and socioeconomic groups, to go through a stepwise process to getting access to a great university. And by doing that, we've increased the diversity of our intake, and we've increased the number of graduates that, not just stay in the region, but actually represent those ethnic groups. So we're really proud of that track record. But again, it's a work in progress, and everybody needs to do more on this front.
Yeah, and it's great, again, that I guess we know that both institutions are really championing this all of the time, but also they're able to bring that to light in the economic review, and another, a set piece where we can talk about the opportunities that lie here and the benefits, and encourage others to sort of follow those leads and to really sort of press ahead on that agenda. Because you mentioned the diversity and the youthfulness of the population we've got here in the city. We need to use that because it could be absolute rocket fuel for our recovery, couldn't it? We've got to make sure that we fully tap into it. So just wrapping up then, and looking to end on an optimistic note, keen to get both of your views on just how adaptive and resilient is Birmingham and our economy, and how can we harness some fantastic opportunities that we've got coming up? Henrietta, you mentioned the Commonwealth Games, but obviously HS2 is also proceeding at speed now and will do over the next sort of decade. How can they play in to help drive economic recovery?
HS2 is absolutely huge. I'll talk about the Commonwealth Games shortly. It's very exciting. But HS2 is the biggest infrastructure investment in a generation in this country. And it's one that's going to put Birmingham at the heart of a network that connects 8 out of the 10 of the UK's biggest cities. So if anything's going to be putting the city in a great place to capitalise and grow following this really difficult situation, it's HS2. And the investment coming in is huge. Obviously, there's the direct piece. There's the number of jobs being created. I think it's expected to create about 26,000 additional jobs in Birmingham and Solihull alone. There's an expected $4 billion increase in economic output per year across the West Midlands off the back of it. But then, as I say, there's also that confidence piece. That's seeing people invest in the city because they know it's going to be at the heart of this major transport network. The knock-on opportunities of more people working on site for businesses in particular areas and so on and so forth. It really is huge for the region. Obviously, the key thing is communicating how businesses can access those opportunities, and also listening when there are challenges with any major infrastructure projects. Obviously, there's localised disruption for businesses, and we're working really closely with HS2 and other stakeholders, just trying to open up those communication channels to make sure everyone's informed, supported, accessing what they need. and really being helped along the way. When it comes to Commonwealth Games, one of the world's largest sporting events, our hospitality and tourism sector has been absolutely hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic. It's been an incredibly difficult time for those businesses. And Commonwealth Games is obviously a really exciting platform to bring people back in, get people coming back into the city, get them having fun, experiencing different parts of the region, because it's not just taking place in Birmingham, although it's the host city. There's events across the sort of wider Greater Birmingham area. And generally really encourage that travel and tourism market to spring back up. So we're really pleased that we've got that on the horizon. Short term, to make sure we're making the most of it, everyone's pretty stretched right now. Every different institution, no matter who you talk to, everyone is coping with COVID-19. They're coping with various other difficult situations. And the really important thing is that we don't start turning inwards and all start thinking about how we're surviving or just delivering what we need to deliver as organisations, and keep up some of the fantastic collaboration that's already happening between regional stakeholders. Make sure everyone's talking to each other so that every possible opportunity we're really making the most of. We're genuinely encouraging and supporting local businesses to apply for procurement and supply chain opportunities. We're genuinely giving local businesses the information and guidance they need to make the most of the tourism and hospitality opportunities, for instance. And of course, the piece around the Commonwealth Trade. As regular listeners to our podcast will know, we've got a Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce as part of the Greater Birmingham Chamber, which we founded in 2018 in order to capitalise on that legacy from the Games by encouraging greater bilateral trade between Greater Birmingham businesses and Commonwealth markets. And really, that is another opportunity that we're really keen to push and promote, ensuring that businesses are aware of those global opportunities, as well as those that are going to be coming knocking physically on the door when the Games comes to Birmingham in 2022, and make sure we're really making the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Chamber's all about collaborative working, and I suppose that's one of the things we love about the Birmingham Economic Review is that sense of partnership with the university, with City-REDI and the policy team here at the Chamber. And I mean, Simon, just your sort of take on the future and I guess the resilience of Birmingham and our ability to bounce back stronger and better, as you said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be clear. I agree with Henrietta entirely. HS2 and the Commonwealth Games are two fantastic events, as it were. They're both temporary in different ways, but they're going to give us a huge boost. And HS2 as a construction sort of event is, we need to build on the short-term construction projects, relatively short-term, to build a cluster of R&D, innovation and skills that will lead the world in some areas of design and construction. These are opportunities to set ourselves on the map, in terms of a centre to attract new firms and investment and new talented people. So it's about translating these kinds of events into longer-term growth drivers. Commonwealth Games is fantastic. The university has just launched out as a key partner. We're going to be using our facilities for the sports. We're going to be hosting the athletes. It's a wonderful opportunity for ourselves and the city. And it's an opportunity to show off. This is a fantastic city region, and we've got to tell the world that it's a great place to come and it's a great place to do business. So again, it's about translating these things into, making us more attractive, and more a place for others to look to do business. But let me just finally come to the point that has already been made. But the resilience and the ability to adapt through this really difficult time, this period of uncertainty, does, as you suggested, need a really good collective consensus and a coordinated response. We've got to stick together as a region, like never before, in a sense. And it's great that the Chamber of Commerce, which is, I have to say, one of the most reliable and trusted sort of shining lights in an uncertain time.
Thank you.
You've been bringing together voices of business of all kinds, large and small, to bring to the table in top discussions about how the region should respond to the current shock and how it can grow successfully in the future. So, we need to maintain that sort of united front across universities, the combined authorities, the LEPs, local authorities, city councils, but in particular businesses through the Chamber. And I think if we can manage that, we have a fantastic future.
That's a great way to wrap up this episode. And, just to sort of say, started by saying there's an awful lot to talk about, and there's certainly an awful lot in this year's Birmingham Economic Review, from COVID and Brexit and the sort of the climate crisis, Black Lives Matter, innovation, and we just sort of finished there on the Commonwealth Games and HS2, and while it can feel like an incredibly challenging time. It is, in fact, an incredibly challenging time right now. That isn't going to be the case forever, and we do have to keep our minds on that, and I guess sort of personally just manage that resilience and the sense of coming together. We are stronger when we're together, and what we hope that people who are listening, if you've enjoyed this, we've only been able to sort of touch on some of the topics. I think we could have spoken for hours, but the launch of the Economic Review is on the 20th of October. We've got an online webinar event to mark the launch, so you'll be able to see the links to that connected to this podcast. So please do join us, be a part of the conversation, and also we'll be sending out the actual publication in full. Details will be available for download at the same time. So yes, thank you to Simon and to Henrietta for joining us today. And we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Chamber podcast. And if you like what you heard, you can find more episodes on all the major podcast apps, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as the latest news section of www.greaterbirminghamchambers.com.